On Monday night, the Prime Minister made a speech setting out a vision for a foreign policy with morality and values at the very heart of it. Yet the absence of anything in the King's speech that even comes close to promoting the UK as a positive and outward-looking nation shows that this government embodies neither morality nor values. Indeed, a foreign policy with morality at its heart would not leave over 2 million Palestinians trapped in a humanitarian nightmare without food, water, medicine or power. And a foreign policy that puts values first would not be following the directions set by Washington and the United States in addressing this conflict. A foreign policy that is built on morality would not stand by as over 11,000 Palestinians are killed, as more than 27,000 are wounded, and as 7,500 women and children have their lives taken from them, or as schools, hospitals, churches, mosques, refugee camps and homes are reduced to rubble. And a foreign policy that is driven by values would not still be advocating the 4-hour pauses that do nothing to alleviate the suffering of innocent men, women and children, and do nothing to end the violence that those living in the region have faced for decades. A foreign policy of morality and values would also not leave this government unable to answer just how many Palestinian lives it would take before they condemn the actions of the Israeli military in Gaza, which continue to violate international law, continue to stand as acts of collective punishment, and continue to fall within the definition of war crimes as they so clearly do. Madam Deputy Speaker, instead a foreign policy of morality and values would be advocating front and centre a ceasefire that ends the bloodshed, allows desperately needed aid to reach those most in need, and creates space following the safe return of hostages for meaningful negotiations on a lasting peace. Madam Deputy Speaker, with over 11,000 Palestinian civilians and 1,200 Israelis who have been killed since the 7th of October and tens of thousands more wounded, it's clear to me, clear to the United Nations and clear to every single aid agency operating on the ground in Gaza that a humanitarian pause just doesn't do enough and doesn't go far enough. The innocent men, women and children of Gaza who are trapped in the never-ending nightmare of conflict, which they did not start and which they have no power to end, do not need a pause. They need it to stop. And the only way that we can achieve this is with a real and immediate ceasefire. Madam Deputy Speaker, I remain clear in my belief that it is the right thing to do, that it's the right choice to make if we want to see an end to the bloodshed and a lasting peace in the region, which no humanitarian pause will ever be able to achieve. Madam Deputy Speaker, and that is why I stood down from the opposition front bench. I'm here also advocating for a ceasefire rather than brief humanitarian pauses, because without a ceasefire, without a real break in the fighting, we will just see the unimaginable suffering, the horror, the death, the destruction and the devastation unfolding in Gaza continue. Without a ceasefire, the bloodshed that has already left thousands of innocent civilians dead, that has wounded so many more, that has left children without parents and robbed parents of their children, and which sees premature babies left to die outside their incubators, will tragically continue. Without a ceasefire, the desperately needed aid and assistance, the food, water, fuel and medicine that Palestinians urgently need and cry out for will not be able to safely enter Gaza. We will not be able to reach those who are most in need, and will lead to the deaths of many hundreds and thousands more. And without a ceasefire, the negotiations working towards a peaceful resolution and a real two-state solution, which the region cannot wait for any longer, will simply not have the space nor the will to succeed. That is why, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am supporting the ceasefire amendments today, and why I will continue to advocate for a ceasefire to stop the bloodshed, enable desperately needed aid to reach those most in need, and create space for meaningful negotiations. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.